Walking. We as a species are capable of walking, but most of us don't understand how we walk, and that included me. It was first when I tried to recreate walking that it became apparent just how little about walking I actually understood. But it is fascinating. We are going to go on a journey to uncover the underlying principles of walking, starting from the basics and building up until we have a robot that can walk in any direction and walk over obstacles without any cameras or vision. We are going to start with the early works of Mark Rybert. Yes, that Mark Rybert, the one that went on to found Boston Dynamics. You see, walking is something we in robotics call an underactuated problem. This is a way to say that we can't always directly control everything we want to. In practice, that means that for our walking robot, there are only certain key moments where we can control our forward or sideways velocity. But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's start with something much simpler. Imagine a ball floating in space. As there is no force acting on it, it will not change its motion. But once we apply a force, the ball will move and accelerate according to Newton's second law. This is a very trivial setup, but it's good to remind ourselves that the motions we are trying to achieve with walking is also caused by forces. We are going to give our imaginary ball a foot and place it under gravity. What we have here is called a one-legged hopper, and this is the type of robots Mark studied early on. This simple robot jumps. During each jump, the robot pushes its leg against the ground and accelerates up. So, how exactly do we get this robot to move sideways? One idea would be to push the leg sideways when it is in contact with the ground to get a sideways force, but this would have an unintentional consequence. The leg is acting as a lever arm and would cause the ball to spin. This would imply that when we are in contact with the ground, we can only push away from the ball. But all hope is not lost. There is another way. Let's assume that the ball is already in sideways motion. During a step, the foot will be in contact with the ground for a time period of t before it leaves the ground. If the ball during this time period is behind the contact point for exactly half this time period, and ahead for the other half, then if we integrate the forces during the contact, we see that the sideways forces cancel out. This would mean that the ball would leave the step with the same velocity as it entered. The interesting thing happens if the step is not symmetrical. What if, during a step, the ball is ahead of the contact point for longer than it is behind it, and then the force would no longer cancel out, and the ball would accelerate forward, leaving the step with a higher velocity than it entered, and this would not cause any spinning motion on the ball. In the same way, if the ball is behind the contact for longer than it's ahead of it, it will slow down. This is the key behind almost all bipedal walking, and it is one of the core ideas behind Mark's one-legged hoppers. This fundamental principle comes in many forms and nuances. We are going to focus on the capture point method, because it always assumes you're falling, and it can balance the robot even under disturbances or unseen objects. There are other common ways, such as using the zero moment point, like early Honda Ismo robots, but they typically require flat feet and fully actuated ankles. Another method is to use zero hybrid dynamics, which is a beautiful method, but it is difficult to implement and relies on geometrical algebra. So, how do we take these concepts and ideas and turn it into stable walking? Let's begin by imagining a world that is two-dimensional, with a simple robot that has a torso and two legs. In this world, we can only fall forwards or backwards, but not sideways. For now, let's assume we already know how to control the joints in our robot, so that we can think about how we control the feet instead of how we control each individual joint. We would like this abomination of a creature to walk, but what is it we actually want to control directly? In this 2D world, there are three things we mainly care about. The first is to control the height of the torso. If the torso is on the ground, well, that is not exactly walking. The second is that we want our torso to be upright. Remember the ball spinning? We don't want our torso to be spinning wildly, no matter how desirable that may seem. Finally, we would like to control the forward or backward velocity, which means controlling the velocity of the torso. So these are the things we want to control. But what is it we actually can control? What tools do we have at our disposal to make this happen? During walking, we always have one leg in contact with the ground. This leg we call the stance leg. With the stance leg, we can choose how much we push away from the torso, and this will be used to control the height of the torso. We can also push the stance leg forwards or backwards, and as we already have established, this would mainly cause the torso to rotate. But this is actually desirable, because now we can use that to control the angle of our torso. That only leaves the third part, the velocity. But we can't use the stance leg for that, as it is already used up for the two other tasks. But what about the other leg? The one that is in the air? This we call the swing leg. With it, we can choose where and when we want to place the next step, and if we remember the intuition from the one-legged hopper, we can use this to control the velocity. But this also means that we can only command a new velocity when we place down a new foot. So let's get this two-dimensional robot to walk. If we let the camera follow the robot, we can observe that walking is a repeating cycle. This is an important observation, because we need to decide how we are going to represent the state and targets of the robot. For example, when we talk about the position of the torso or the position we want to place the next step, these positions needs to be expressed relative to something. If we just take an arbitrary coordinate frame fixed to the world, then these values would keep growing depending on how far we have walked. But this doesn't utilize the repeating nature of a walking cycle. Instead, we want to express everything relative to a coordinate frame that is independent of where the robot is or how many steps it has taken. And there's one really good candidate. What if we place the coordinate frame at the location of the stance foot, as long as the foot doesn't slip? This frame is anchored to the ground during a step, and for the next step, it is updated to the new contact point. This way, the representation of the robot is always relative to the stance foot. And our walking controller doesn't need to care about where the robot is in the world, only where it is in relation to the current contact location. So now that we know in what frame we express the robot in, it's time to start building our controllers. To control the height of the torso, we use a simple proportional controller. With arrow in height, it's used to generate a velocity vector that either extends or retracts the stance foot. Similarly, the angle theta of the torso is also controlled by a simple proportional controller, which creates a velocity vector for the stance foot orthogonal to the direction of the torso. And then we can simply just combine the two vectors. Now, you might be thinking that we can't actually put a velocity on the stance foot, because it is in contact with the ground. And you would be correct. But what happens is that the torso instead moves in the opposite direction. Now the big question, where do we place the next step? We are going to break this down into two sub-steps. Where we want to place the foot and how we are going to get there. You can think of the location we want to place the next step as P of X. But here's the thing, if you were to consider the full dynamics of the robot, then calculating P of X is a very difficult problem. But luckily, we can cheat. Let me explain. If we look at our robot walking and expand our minds, we can see that it almost looks like the movements of a linear inverted pendulum. So what if we don't need the exact dynamics, just something that is good enough? We are gonna do a crude, simple approximation and say that the entire robot behaves like a linear inverted pendulum. Now, remember the intuition from the one-legged hopper and how the velocity was controlled by the foot placement. We will start with a simple idea. Can we find a foot placement where if we place our foot there right now, in this instant, it will bring our torso to a stop once it reaches that position? If we use the linear inverted pendulum model, that position is called the instantaneous capture point, or for short, ICP. This basically tells us at any given moment where we need to place our next step right now to stop our falling. However, we would like the robot to not just stop, but to follow a velocity. There are two ways to look at this. Either we want to predict the foot placement for a time t from the last step. This can be achieved by using the capture point corresponding to the desired velocity and then solve the equations to get the next step location. And this works. But if something would happen during the step, like let's say someone pushes the robot, then this position would not be updated and the robot might fall. Instead, what we will use is the continuous version, which tells us at any given moment where we should place down the next step to keep the velocity we want. And then all we have to do is let our swing foot track this position, and it's up to us to choose when we want to place the foot down. So for our swing leg, we also need to decide how we pick it up and place it down. And we're going to do a very simple approach. We will let t be the time since the last step, and the capital T to be the total time for a step. We can then define tau, which goes between 0 and 1 during a step. And the simple solution is then to determine the height of the swing leg by using a sinusoidal function. If we now let our swing leg follow the height of the sinusoidal function and the position of the capture point method, then we have something that can walk. And even more impressively, it can walk up onto an obstacle. What happens if we try to walk down? You see, there's a fatal assumption in this model, and that is that the foot will contact the ground at zero height. And our robot doesn't know what to do if there's no ground where it expects it. But there's a simple solution. You see, when there is no ground at the end of the step, then tau will grow larger than 1. And we can use that to both lower the foot below zero and also lower the torso height. And now we have something that can walk over obstacles without seeing them. Whenever the swing leg touches the ground, we switch it to become the stance leg. And then the walking cycle just keeps on repeating. Alright, before we move to full 3D walking, I just want to give some very quick introduction to robotics. So far, we have assumed that whenever we tell the robot to move with some velocity vector, that it magically happens. But a robot is not controlled through the foot, it's controlled through the joints. But luckily, we can translate the velocity vectors at our feet to an angle of velocity for each individual joint. And this is done with something called inverse differential kinematics. This way we can translate the output of our walking controller into something that the robot understands. The robot I'm trying to build has an encoder in each joint so it knows where the limbs are. It also has an IMU in the torso, which allows it to know its orientation and acceleration. And now we also have a switch in each foot to detect if it's in contact with the ground or not. This is all the sensory input that is given to our controller. The controller then outputs a velocity for each joint to follow. And at each joint there's an actuator. For those new to the channel, I've started developing my own actuators with custom motor drivers. These motor drivers are sponsored and manufactured by PCBWay. If you build robots, fast prototyping and reliable boards matter a lot. For these boards, I let PCBWay order all of the components from the bill of materials and had the machine assemble them. And the process was super simple. If you want to know more, there's a link in the description. These remote drives are responsible for following the velocity commands and allowing the robot to move. And this is essentially a walking control loop that runs a few hundred times a second. Alright, I think it's time to take our robot out of the 2D world and into the third dimension. And I somehow think our boy is not appreciating the third dimension. Now, for this dimension, we'll need to add a second joint in the hip to allow our legs to move sideways. And we have actually already covered all the hard stuff. So now, we just need to apply the exact same control leg as walking forward, sideways. Together, we then have a P of X and a P of Y, together with the height of the swing leg. And for stance leg, we only need to generate a sideways velocity to stabilize the torso sideways as well. And there's one more thing I would like to add, which I got inspired by some other works. Right now, we have a fixed step duration time t, but if we were to start losing our balance, then perhaps we would like to put down our legs sooner. And similarly, if P of X or P of Y starts going to a position we can't reach, we'd like to place down a new step before that happens. So I put up this virtual bounds, which define wherein the next step can be placed. And if the controller gets closer to its bounds, we will start adding to tau, which will place the next step sooner. And this works. But now we have a new problem. Our robot is drunk. It has a twisting motion with each step. The problem is at the foot contact. Right now the contact is essentially just a singular point, so there's no frictional torque to stop the twisting motion. But it's a very simple solution. We simply add feet to the robot. We won't even bother with controlling the feet. We can let them be completely passive. Right now their only goal is to stop the twisting motion. And this works surprisingly well. So now we can walk forwards, backwards, side to side. But you know, it would be nice to be able to turn. And to be able to face the direction you want to walk. So, how do we turn? Let's do a field experiment. Okay, that was actually quite simple. All we have to do is to turn the stance foot in the opposite direction of that we want to turn. And to make this possible, we will add the final joint in our hips, which will allow the legs to twist. And now, when we want to turn, we simply give our feet a twisting velocity. And this works surprisingly well. Now, I don't know if anyone is still watching at this point, but we have done it. We have a full 3D robot that can walk, turn, handle obstacles without falling. And all of this from a simple approximation that the robot behaves like a linear inverted pendulum. And asking the question, where do I need to place the next step to keep this pendulum from falling? This type of controller works best if the robot has a high center of gravity and light legs, as these robots behave closer to an inverted pendulum. But the robot I want to build has a low center of gravity and heavy legs, which is indeed the opposite. So how well will our controller perform on this robot? After a bit of tuning of the parameters and step time, I finally got this. It's like physics hesitated for a moment, but allows it to walk. It is not as stable as the taller robots, but it works much better than I expected. For not using a machine learning approach or any optimal model predictive control, I am very happy with the performance, given how simple the implementation is. And the fact this same controller can handle vastly different robots is a good sign. This was an interesting video to make. I spent the last month trying to wrap my mind around walking controllers, and I was surprised by how hard it was to find any approachable information on the topic, especially for full 3D walkers that can handle obstacles. Information is out there, but it is scattered in a million places, over research papers, books, lectures, blog posts, and perhaps I missed an obvious source. But this video is a result of combining the concepts and ideas I could find into some type of Frankenstein monster, and it can be implemented with only a few hundred lines of code. The code is linked in the description for those that are curious. And this was not the video I was originally planning to make. My initial goal was to build a one-legged hopper to test out the actuators that I've been designing, but I've been running into some new difficulties with the 3D printed parts. Anything over 10 Nm and they seem to break. But a new opportunity arrived. I received a small desktop CNC machine that allows me to make some of the parts in aluminium. You don't develop your own actuators because it's easier or because the cost savings will outweigh the time and effort you put into it. You do it for the love of the game.